Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, the little book of Pride Heroes, icons of the LGBTQIA+ community. Plus, my Big Brother Canada Season 12 coverage continues with the most recent evicted house guest. That and more in episode 404, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Harder, porn star, burlesque performer, and the creator of Porn to Be a Star. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country and producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada and Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as a #1 Canadian LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So today, cultural critic, journalist, and author Jared Richards is my guest and joins me to talk about his latest book, The Little Book of Pride Heroes, icons of the LGBTQIA+ community. The Little Book of Pride Heroes celebrates queer activists, artists, comedians, writers, musicians, pop culture giants who have shaped our world, expanded our horizons, and radically increased queer visibility. We'll find out all about the Little Book of Pride Heroes and more. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house. And on this episode, I'm featuring some gay 80s dance floor hits, some queer rap, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 404 through Rainbow Country. And our first stop, the Rainbow Country Bookstore. Today, British author Adam Smith reads from his current book, Deep Sniff, A History of Poppers and Queer Futures. By the way, the reading is accompanied by the parody song, Just a Quick Sniff of Poppers, from drag duo Cookie and Kashida.
When I was just a lad, I learned that anal sex was bad. The church said it was a dirty, rotten sin. But then I learned from other guys that no matter what the size, there's a simple trick to help you take that dick. Just a quick sniff of poppers helps the penis slide right in. The penis slides right in, you can take it with a grin. Just a quick sniff of poppers helps the penis slide right in the most delightful way.
In the winter of 1866, actually, while a medical student in Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, Brunton met a patient called William H. This young man was only 26, but already had trained as a blacksmith and then switched to toll keeper. His first job may have required too much exertion for him to continue because Brunton's notes reveal that William suffered from heart trouble. When Brunton met him, William had recently been hit by a dull, heavy pain about the left nipple every 3 days or so, lasting for at least half an hour. The pain had come on after years of infrequent attacks ever since he'd suffered from rheumatism as a child. After a 3-week hospital stay earlier in the spring, William was back just before Christmas. Doctors gave him aconite, which slows the heart rate, and digitalis. When neither worked, Brunton gave him brandy. The strong stuff didn't help either, so there was only one thing for it. The experiment was not a stab in the dark. Brunton acted in a way that was consistent with his wishes to take basic research from the lab to the bedside, and only with a decent understanding of the actual effect in the body. He had read the work of another scientist, Richardson, that amyl nitrite dilated blood vessels, and had even discussed the effect with his colleague in Edinburgh, Arthur Gamgee, who had made some unpublished measurements of this effect. Brunton obtained some amyl nitrite from Gamgee, who made it for him, and consent for an experiment from his supervising physician. And this is how Brunton came to give his patient William amyl nitrite. On March the 12th, 1867, Brunton observed, "The pain came on as usual at 3 a.m. A few drops of nitrite of amyl were put on a towel and inhaled by the patient. The primary effect noticed was a suffusion of the face, and the patient felt a glow over his face and chest. The pain disappeared almost simultaneously with the occurrence of these phenomena, but returned in 3 minutes. He then inhaled 5 drops more. The pain again disappeared and did not return."
I met this guy once in a bar who took me outside to his car. He spread my cheeks and tried to ram it in. I screamed, "No, it's too big!" He said, "Take it all, you pig!" Then he shoved this small brown bottle up my nose. And girl, I gotta tell you something. That quick snip of puppers helped the penis slide right in. The penis slide right in.
Now I can take it with a grin.
Just a quick snip of puppers helps the penis slide right in the most delightful way.
Good queer performers push their audiences forward into the future they desire. A good performance is utopia for a moment. In the Royal Vauxhall Tavern, all of these potential utopias were willed away when the police stormed in. Performances interrupted, orgasms foregone, connections broken. The police brought their alternative performance. The police did not just want to stop what was happening, they wanted to make their own utopia for a moment. They pulled on their costumes and they put themselves to work on embodying authority, power, intimidation. As individual officers, people with homes and hobbies, they had been moved by some newspaper stories about a deadly sex craze and by others that spoke of a horrible illness killing men who had sex with each other. They heard the words of politicians who spoke about preserving families and protecting children. As individuals, they may even have wanted no more gay or queer people. As an organized group of individuals, each wanting to belong to something bigger than they were, police officers were grabbed by the idea of cutting the number of queer venues. All we have is the records of their group performance, the way they stopped gay and queer people. They arrested our futures, at least for a night or two. The story of these raids is a story from the past, but it is about how we live in the present, creating a future. In every moment we are performing, making choices about the future we want to build for ourselves and others. We can be inspired by other people who are better than us at articulating a future, but it is not some distant, formless thing. How we are living now is always creating a future, whether we like it or not. Whether or not we are trying, we are performing a future. As a genderqueer dancer stretches the limbs they have, they bring us into their utopia for a moment.
Wow, this stuff is amazing!
Yeah, let me try some. I've never done it before.
Wow, this is hot.
Shit.
Hey, Cookie, let's put something in my ass and see if it works.
I just dropped the whole thing on the carpet. Here, bend over. Let me try this chair.
Oh my god, I can't even feel anything.
Shit, the whole thing fits.
Wow, the room is spinning right now. These are great, but you know what? You can't use them if you're taking Viagra.
Why?
Well, because you'll die.
Oh, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Wow, this stuff is amazing. So this goes out to all the guys who are too concerned with size. It really doesn't matter anymore.
As you watch his manhood grow, shove that bottle up your nose. Relax,
Relax
your hole,
and
slide down on that pole.
Just
return the most recent evicted house guest from Big Brother Canada Season 12.
Hi everyone, this is Mark Tewksbury, Olympic champion, leader, humanitarian. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
House guests, I have the results. By a unanimous vote. Victoria, you have been evicted from the Big Brother Canada house. Please gather your things and say your goodbyes.
Okay. Congratulations, guys. Keep it going. I love you guys so much. Anthony, we can talk when this is all said and done.
Of course, my love.
Hi, Spicy.
All right.
Give them that spicy bee energy.
Oh, you know, it's the only way I know how.
Bye, babe. Yes.
Hi, Victoria. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am good. Victoria, that vote unanimous. Did that vote surprise you?
Yeah. No, it didn't surprise me. I was well aware that Anthony went to work and, got them against me to get me out those doors. Anthony is someone who's very strategic, and he wouldn't have put me up on that block unless he knew he had the votes to get me out. He very much kept bits of information in his back pocket, some true, some not, to whip out when it was time to take his shot and use against me. And that's what he did.
Victoria, who was your true final two?
It breaks my heart to say it, but Anthony was my true final two. I thought it would be historic, legendary, and iconic for the two All-Stars to be the last ones walking in and the last ones walking out. And, it really is all that I thought about throughout the game was how we could get there. So it's definitely devastating that I went out on his HOH.
Victoria, you and Anthony are returning house guests. You got evicted on Anthony's HOH. How do you feel being evicted on Anthony's HOH? How does that make you feel?
It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. It's almost unforgivable. I never would have seen this coming. If you would have asked me that going into the house, I would have said no way. I knew I was going up by the time the ceremony came, but it still didn't really take away the shock and hurt of it all. I was very disappointed, and now there's no way that we could make history as being the final two together. So it definitely makes me sad.
Victoria, do you think that there was anything more you could have done to save your game?
Possibly, maybe if I talked to Bailey and Todd alone and, really just tried to let them understand the game that Anthony was playing and to not be persuaded by it all. But my eviction was very quick. I didn't really have a lot of time to campaign. There was other things we were doing in the house. And, I was just, to be honest, exhausted by that point. And I just know that Anthony had already gone to work and kind of turned them against me. So I did want to leave with my integrity and head held high. And I just didn't have the time to get there.
So Victoria, let's go back in time. You find out you'll be on Big Brother Canada 12. Do you have a strategy going into this season?
Yeah, like coming into this season, I was really looking for people to play the game with. I feel like the first time I played, I didn't really have strong relationships, strong alliances. So I told myself I really did want to find strong players, align myself with them. And that's exactly what I did. I aligned myself with Avery, someone who won 2 amazing HOHs. I had 3 HOHs under my belt. So between us, we controlled more than half the game. And that is powerful. That is amazing. So that was kind of the strategy I wanted to have going in there. And I do think that I followed through with that.
So, Victoria, you played on both season 9 and now season 12. Which season was more challenging for you to navigate?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I feel like playing the first time, I had a lot more like fun with it. Like it's almost like I didn't realize I was playing Big Brother. I was just fascinated by the challenges, the wardrobe, like the excitement of it all, that I wasn't really playing the game, like making alliances and scheming and doing whatever it took to stay in the house. I was just there for a good time. Playing the second time, I very much was like, okay, I want to make it further. I want to be remembered. How do people win this game? Okay, they align themselves with strong people. They get out strong players. They win when the time's right, not all the time. You know, I had a lot more in me and a lot more to like observe and kind of go off of. So yeah, like I think it was just more challenging in the fact that I had people that I actually wanted to work with and that actually wanted to work with me, and just trying to navigate my way through the people and alliances and who I wanted to stay true to and who I thought was bad for my game. Just a lot more of that kind of went into myself playing the second time.
So, Victoria, you won 3 HOHs, 1 POV. What were those competitions like to play?
Awesome. Super cool. They did not hold back with the challenges this year. They were freaking amazing. You know, like spitting your venom into tubes of players you wanted to eliminate. Hilarious. And, you know, being an HOH and one of our big twists, the movie Night Massacre, like amazing. And then, you know, we had some past house guests come in and run around with numbers on their shirts. We had to try and add up the numbers. And I put 1, 2, 3, 4 as my answer. So that coming out with the winning number, or like number to win, is just hilarious to me. And the executive veto, oh my God, that we had to do like a process of elimination where someone would pick somebody and they would be eliminated, and I made it to the end. Like that meant so much to me, knowing that the house guests chose me. Like nobody was threatened by me at that point. They were okay with me having that power, and that meant a lot to me. That meant at that point in the game I was doing everything right.
Victoria, most challenging part about being part of this season?
Yeah, I think the most challenging part about being on this season was being an all-star and knowing that people are watching and they're expecting a lot from me. I've played the game, I've done this before, and people are expecting me to go in there and kick butt. So that's exactly what I tried to do. Go in there, win things, align myself, and play the game and show people that I'm a Big Brother player. I'm an all-star for a reason. And I hope that I gave them that and showed them why I got the call.
Victoria, my last question. Best part about being part of Big Brother Canada Season 12?
Oh my God. Honestly, that right there, just being a part of it, getting the call, like there's over like 150 previous house guests, and like being one of the 2 to be selected is absolutely amazing. I also got to go on a secret mission, which has been my dream my whole life. So that secret mission was amazing, where I got to like do stuff in the house without the house guests knowing and kind of play pranks on them. And I loved that. And then, yeah, that iconic executive veto, like being chosen by the house to have that around my neck, really made me feel like, damn, I am that all-star. I am that player. I'm exactly where I need to be right now in this house and with my game. And that was just such an amazing feeling.
Victoria, well said. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, of course. Thanks so much.
Big Brother Canada Season 12 airs on Global TV Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. For more information, simply visit bigbrothercanada.ca. Up next, The Little Book of Pride Heroes.
Hi, I'm Paul Poirier, Canadian champion in ice dance and 3-time Olympian, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Jared Richards, hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you going?
I am well. I have to say thank you for being here, to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that, especially to talk about your latest project. It's a book, the Little Book of Pride Heroes, Icons of the LGBTQIA plus community. First, I want to start here. The book. How would you describe this book? Is it a coffee table book? Is it, just a regular book? How would you describe the type of book that this is? Let's start there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a coffee table book is probably a good description, but it's a little small. So maybe, it's great if you have like a tiny little coffee table, maybe it'll fit that. But yeah, or a pocketbook. I think it's kind of like a bite-sized guide or an entryway into queer history and queer icons. It's definitely not intended to be a massive history or kind of a really in-depth look and canonization of queer figures. So I think that probably is impossible to do right. So yeah, it's just kind of like a nice entryway, a little bit of information on 50 figures, or 52 actually, that I think are inspirational in varying ways.
It reminds me of a materialized version of social media, of like postings that you might see on socials, like you just said, like a bite-sized sort of, take on a particular person. You open up a page and boom, there you go. It's beautifully illustrated by Phil Constantinos.
Yeah.
I don't know how you say his last name.
Constantinesso, but yeah.
Oh, you say it than me.
I mean, now I've probably got it wrong, so who knows? I'm pretty sure I've got it right. But.
And it features a number of LGBT individuals, I believe over 50, people like George Michael, Frida Kahlo, Laverne Cox, just to name 3 individuals. How did you decide who you would feature?
Oh God, it was really, really difficult. I mean, I think when you're doing something like this, there are so many important queer figures throughout history, right? And there is such a beautiful kind of tapestry of people who have come before where we are to create the world that we live in today, and they're continuing to fight for a better world. And so I think like right at the start of the book, me and the publishers kind of began accepting that you're not going to be able to make a book that covers everything, and that's impossible. And without that pressure, that kind of eases things up. So really what we just wanted to focus on was some activists, some really popular figures, and some lesser known ones as well. So, we've got a pretty eclectic bunch of people. So, there's figures that probably everybody listening would be across, like Elliot Page, for example, or Margaret Cho, Elton John. So kind of pop culture figures that have helped change conversations around queerness and queer identity. And then a couple of historical figures as well. So we've got like your Alan Turings, we've got Josephine Baker, we've got like James Baldwin, for example. And then also just some like fun people as well, like Lil Nas X or Hannah Gadsby, or I think like Cara Delevingne, who I think, Cara, love her. I think she's great, but she's probably not on an equal playing field when you look at somebody like Marsha P. Johnson, who's also in the book. but it's about providing that kind of range of queer figures and representation that people can get excited about.
Were there people that you left out? Were there people that were potentially on your list and they did not make this cut?
Yes, it hurts me that there's no John Waters in this book. And there's so many others as well. Like, I mean, Larry Kramer doesn't feature. He's such an important figure in terms of AIDS activism. Bell Hooks doesn't feature, whose writing has kind of really shaped the way that people think about queerness and also race as well. People like Truman Capote. I'm really kind of revealing myself as probably more interested in writers, but also artists like Robert Mapplethorpe or like Sufjan Stevens even, who's like very deeply important to me. And there's a heap of Australian figures as well that I would love to cover. There's a couple in the book, but there's so many in Australia who are really special, and I would have loved to be able to platform them, but perhaps that's for even more Pride heroes, you know?
Do you think there will be a sequel?
Oh, well, maybe if I pressure the publisher for a sequel, we'll see. No plans at the moment, but TBD.
Yeah, because I can see a series where you come out with a sequel to it, and then potentially even, you know, like a Queer Heroes Australia, or, you know, like getting into like specifics from different countries, that sort of thing. But what inspired you, Jared? What inspired you to want to create this book?
Well, the boring answer is that the publisher approached me. But, I mean, why I was interested in the idea of it is I think that, you know, these stories or these snippets and insights into queer figures' lives are really helpful. I remember being a teenager, being like not quite 100% sure of myself, and looking towards figures, whether just like out queer comedians that we had in Australia, like Josh Thomas was quite big in Australia at that time when I was kind of a nascent queer. And he was one of the few gay men who looked like me on Australian TV. And that was really important and powerful. And I think now that I'm a bit older, I can maybe forget about that importance, but highlighting these stories and these people who are very eclectic and diverse. And, you know, there's people like Gilbert and George who are UK artists, a couple make kind of postmodern art and have been since the 60s. They really love Margaret Thatcher, which is not something that I identify with at all. But I think speaking to a wide variety of diverse people, whether they be, you know, identity or whether they be beliefs, I think speaks to the openness of what queerness can be. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's just really important to educate yourself about who came before, and you can find a lot of strength in that. Yeah.
There's a word that I recently came across maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and the word is presentism. Do you know the word?
I know the word, but I could use a reminder of its definition.
Essentially, it means taking modern day words and thinking and applying these current day words and thinking to historical events and applying them to, you know, things that happened in our past. In the introduction to this book, you say, quote, "We've taken cues from each icon on their pronouns and identity, you know, at the time of printing, and resisted the urge to label the unlabeled or use terms that weren't common use during their day." You're talking about presentism. You're talking about not wanting to apply modern day thinking and words to things that happened in the past, which is the way it should be. So talk to me about why it was important for you to have this quote in the introduction of this book.
That's a really good question. I think there's a tendency to kind of use our eyes to gaze back upon the past. And, what we've been talking about is this need for representation and the need to see yourself in history. And so what comes with that is somebody might look at somebody like Marsha P. Johnson, and I suppose I keep coming back to her because she's such a titan, and identify her as a trans woman, but that's not really a term that she used during her time. And I think it's important to honor that, both in terms of who she was at the time and her identity, but also understand that our ideas of gender and sexuality are very fluid and they're very new as well. Kind of, conventional ideas of like sexuality and gender kind of come from like the 19th century. So we've only been playing in this territory for a little while now in terms of the way that you or I or other people use language to identify what we do and what we love and what we have sex with as well. And I think I'm not a historian, I'm a journalist, but I do think there's a danger in looking back with our own eyes and kind of oversimplifying things. And I wanted the book, even though it is a bite-sized look at these people, to kind of offer some of that complexity of gender and sexuality and of people as well, which is why I mentioned Gilbert and George. I feel like I didn't really close that loop there. But, there's messiness in these figures who were important, whether it be like, again, with Marsha, there was turbulent periods in her life. And with Gilbert and George, I don't agree with their politics at all, but I wouldn't deny that they are really important figures. And I think painting history with the brushstrokes of the present, whether that be your own politics or your own understanding of gender and sexuality, has a use. But I think in terms of what we're trying to do with the book, is simplifying things. Yeah.
The title, The Little Book of Pride Heroes. Is there a story behind this particular title and choosing it?
Not really, to be honest. Sorry, that's a bit of a bad answer, but
make one up.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm not an improviser. No, thinking about the title, though, I think what we really wanted to establish is that these people, heroes is an interesting term, right? Because we do have people in here who I do think history or queer audiences would look at as heroes. So you've got like a Billy Porter, a Jeanette Mock, or even a Frank Ocean as well. So people who have really pushed forward kind of ideas of gender and sexuality, or what people who look like them can achieve. And then you have figures like Lee Bowery and Roxane Gay who have done that as well. And I don't know, I suppose with heroes, it's maybe, I hope that people can look at these figures and take something from them, I suppose is the answer. And maybe be inspired to look up more people as well.
Hi, I'm Eric Radford, Olympic and world champion figure skater, pianist, and composer, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Terra.
So, as you know, Rainbow Country is heard on broadcast radio, streaming, as well as an edited podcast. I wanted to take this time to give a shout out to someone who listens to Rainbow Country on CKCU FM in Ottawa. I believe the person's name is pronounced Shubham. I believe it's how it's said. Shubham. And they simply write, "Good show. Shabam, I couldn't have said it better myself. Short and to the point." Good show. So if you think what I'm doing here on Rainbow Country, giving voice to the LGBT community and beyond, is worthwhile, I hope you'll consider making a donation to this very outlet you are tuned to. And if you're listening to the edited podcast version, consider making a donation to an outlet that does carry Rainbow Country. How can you do that? Simple. Just head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the donation banner. That's where you'll find the list of the outlets that carry Rainbow Country.
This is gay hip-hop artist, the Mangfather Bob Katz. An artist friend of mine recommended that I check out Mark Tara's Rainbow Country years ago, and I've been enjoying it ever since. Mark's excellent interviews highlight all aspects of the LGBTQ community, and he's not afraid to ask the difficult questions that other hosts avoid. And I love the music that Mark plays on Rainbow Country each week, especially when he plays my music. But seriously, Mark Tara has been such a supporter of my music and has turned me on to so many great LGBTQ artists that I'd never heard of before. I'm so grateful to Mark Tara's Rainbow Country.
Hi, I'm Garrett Conley, author of Boy Erased, a memoir. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So Jared Richards, you are a cultural critic, you are a journalist, an author. You write about film, TV, queer culture, music. A cultural critic. What does that mean? What does that entail?
You sound like my mum. I mean, a cultural critic is a really vague term, and I think honestly,
it sounds really good, but what does it mean?
It does. It sounds much better than freelance writer, I think. No, I mean, cultural critic is somebody who looks at the silly and the profound alike and tries to analyze it and look at why it's happening. So that could be something as simple as a TikTok trend or kind of a conversation on Twitter or a meme, and dissecting its wider context and its wider cultural implications, as much as it is kind of looking at a film and seeing why it's resonating or why it's not resonating. So yeah, I mean, I think a term like that just gives you an open field to examine anything that interests you. And yeah, I don't want to be stuck in like high-low dichotomies, which I think the book also reflects as well in terms of the people that are highlighted.
Queries, is that how you say it? Queries?
Yeah.
What is Queries?
So it is a reading night that I put on here in Sydney, pretty sporadically, but I do have one coming up. And basically, I get about 7 or 8 queer artists. So I get performers, drag queens, comedians, screenwriters, journalists like myself to get up, musicians as well, to get up and perform something that they've written themselves for about, a couple of minutes that can or can't explore their identity. It's really up to them. It's this like cute kind of night, a chance to hear from people who wouldn't necessarily have that audience. So kind of outside of a writers' festival circuit or something so serious. It's very silly. It's very fun. yeah, it's something I really love putting on.
Well said. Well said. You are part of the LGBT community. You mentioned earlier, questioning your sexuality when you were younger. For yourself, when did that start coming into your consciousness, that you had same-sex attractions, that you maybe had an attraction to, a friend of yours, a schoolmate, that sort of thing? When did this start crystallizing for you that, hey, I might be gay?
Yeah, so I think I always had an inkling or a sense of it. I remember kind of, whether this is an imagined memory or real or not, but feeling very different at, say, age 5 or 6. And there's that funny thing where I'm actually reading RuPaul's memoir at the moment for work, and he talks about this. But, people are quick to call you gay before you even realize that you are. So perhaps it's more obvious to outsiders than it is to you. So I definitely encountered that kind of pre-teenage years when I was like 9, 7, 8, was kind of identified as like a sensitive little boy. And that being code, I suppose, and sometimes not so code, sometimes people just calling it out. But yeah, I remember kind of like being more aware of men being attractive kind of when I was 11 or 12. And I remember being on a family holiday, and the Rules of Attraction was playing on TV, the Bret Easton Ellis adapted film from 2001. It has Ian Somerhalder and Sean William Scott from American Pie in it. And there's one particular scene, it's an imagined scene, where Ian Somerhalder's character is kind of fantasizing about hooking up with this straight man. And I was alone in the hotel room watching that. My brother and sister had gone for a walk, and my brother walked in right as that scene was happening. The rest of the film actually not that explicit, but of course he walked in at that moment when I was very transfixed. And, he later asked me if I was gay that night, and I said no, because I wasn't quite ready. But I do remember that being a really pivotal moment for me.
Wow. You are an entertainment reporter at the ABC, the Australian Broadcast Company?
Corporation.
Corporation. The ABC, not to be confused with ABC here in North America, in America. You're also a cultural critic. You're also part of the LGBT community. I'm interested to get your take on how you view the evolution of the LGBT community, and what it was, what it is, where it might be going, because there's a lot of, now we're thinking of sexuality as, something that's fluid. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that 100% in regards to, well, it sounds if you like you can be straight one day, gay the next, then bi the other. It's like, what's your take on where your background and how you see things with the evolution of the LGBT community and everything that's going on with trans rights and where we are today? What's your take?
Well,
it's a bit of a loaded question, but
it's a very big question, but I'll do my best to answer it. I mean, I think let's start with the good. In the time from, I'm turning 30 this year, so I was born in 1994. And the time from me growing up and being like 10, 11, 12 in Australia, living in the outer suburbs of Sydney to now, there has been such an insurmountable difference in terms of representation and just the way that Australia views queer people. The acceptance that has been, the acceptance that's there is far beyond what I grew up with. And I remember there's a line in All of Us Strangers, that film with Andrew Scott that just came out, the Andrew Hay film, where Andrew Hay's character comes out to his mum and she says like something to the effect of, it's a hard life, I worry about you. And I remember my mum saying that. She was like, I don't have a problem with your sexuality, which not necessarily true, but I'm worried about how hard it is for you. And I think now wider culture can see that queer people can have happy, successful lives. And the only thing that's impeding that are homophobes, really. Having said that, those things I think are only true for some of the community. As you touched upon, trans people have very different experiences to what I, as like a cis white gay man living in one of the queer capitals of the world, experience. It's disappointing that the rhetoric around trans people is getting increasingly violent, and it really feels like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back there. I do think that with representation, and the sort of representation that comes with not my book, but I mean with the figures in my book, existing and living and breathing and speaking, there's more awareness of stories and hardships than there was previously in mainstream culture, which is great. But yeah, the fight for equality is very unequal. And I think that is where we're at the moment. And that's definitely true in Australia as well, kind of what's happening in the US in terms of trans people being a political football, I suppose, it is happening here as well. We just kind of regurgitate what you in the UK do, unfortunately. And it's really disheartening and disgusting to see. And I think that's where we're at. And in terms of your question about like fluidity and gender, maybe I'm kind of aligned with you that I can be like a little skeptical, just because maybe where we are and the way that we grew up, identity was more fixed. But I think it's a beautiful thing if people can identify as however they want. And I think one of the real kind of dangers of our society, or one of the big menacing premises of it, is toxic masculinity, which is a term that's overused way too much. But basically I'm referring to men, straight, queer, whatever, who feel confined by their gender into particular roles and an expectation of success and aggression and a performance of being the breadwinner that economic realities don't make possible. And so this anger lashes out at different communities who are stealing their jobs. I'm saying this in quotation marks, or taking away what's rightfully theirs, again, quotation marks. And I think if fluidity allows straight men to feel that less and feel that kind of pushing down weight less, that's a good thing, because that's going to benefit everybody. Even if it, like, I don't know, I think like praising a celebrity for wearing nail polish when they're a heterosexual man is like a bit overstating it, but also I think it's ultimately a net good. Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but I have a lot of thoughts, and it's a big question.
It's a big question, and I think that, getting someone like yourself, someone who is immersed in this and has a journalistic background and can put your thoughts and your words together succinctly to be able to express these things. Personally, that's what I'm looking for, as opposed to someone just, talking for the sake of talking, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm same.
Yeah. So with yourself and the background that you have, you said that, there's the good, there's the bad in terms of, how, the LGBT community, how it's evolving and moving forward, and we've come so far, and we've certainly gained a lot. I'm going to ask you this next question about words, because for me, words do matter. And the use of the word queer and the use of the word gay. And for me, I personally don't necessarily use the word queer in my everyday life. For the show, I do, of course. Because I did an interview a few years ago with two women that were in a relationship. One was a lesbian, the other one was bisexual. And to make a long story short, one of them was on a dating app. She said that she was bisexual in her profile. Changed it because she was getting flack, like, get off the fence, make a decision. And she changed it to queer. And I asked her why she changed to queer, and she said because she preferred ambiguity over persecution. She preferred ambiguity over persecution, using the word queer as opposed to bisexual. What are your thoughts on the use of the word queer, and as opposed to, gay or bisexual or whatever? What are your thoughts?
I think that's a really sad example, unfortunately. I think, firstly, bisexual people do get a lot of flack within our community, really unfairly. But that's not really the question, but I just felt like that was worth saying. I personally, I use the term for myself as a gay man. There was a time where I would identify as queer, but I did think for the purposes of dating and sex, it wasn't that useful. But I've always understood queerness to be more of a worldview or a philosophy.
Or a political view or something.
Yes, exactly. I think when I was at university, I read Cruising Utopia by Jose Esteban Munez, which is a book about queer theory and kind of what queerness could be. And, it's very academic and it's very lofty and it's very cerebral. And maybe that's not useful to everybody, but I found it very fascinating. And I think it helped me understand my sexuality is more than just who I love or who I want to fuck. And more into like a radical kind of, okay, if I'm other to what conventional society is, what can I be and what world can I live in? And I think queerness as a term signifies that. It's kind of, it doesn't have to be a rejection of capitalism or a rejection of, I don't know, liberal ideology or blah, 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 blah. But it can be those things. And I think queerness is a possibility, it's a gateway into another way of living. And whether that be something outside of monogamy or whether it be kind of like a more radical political stance, it's just an otherness. And that I really identify with and I find very powerful, particularly within art. And but I don't know. So I understand why people use it to describe themselves. And I think like I would describe myself maybe politically in those terms, but not in terms of my sexuality. But maybe on another day I might.
Jared, I have my last question for you, and it's simply this. What do you hope audiences come away with? What do you hope your audience takes away after they've read the little book of Pride Heroes? What do you hope people take away from this book?
Well, I hope they learn things that they hadn't learned before, whether that's discovering a completely new icon, which was a process that I did while kind of writing the book. There were maybe names that I was familiar with, but their stories I wasn't. But I also hope that they see inspiration, I suppose, in the many ways that there are to live as a queer person and to thrive as well. And that they are inspired to look elsewhere because there are important queer figures around us living right now and that have just passed, that can be a real source of strength and power for us to look back on. And I hope I've captured some of that in the book, and kind of, we'll get people to look further beyond that as well.
Well said, well said. Jared Richards, thank you so much for your time. Well said, well done, well published.
Thank you.
Jared Richards, The Little Book of Pride Heroes, is available wherever you get your favorite books. And for even more on this artist, simply visit jaredjrichards.com.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Joey Lamar, best-selling author of Mambo Lips and Salsa Hips, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.